how is the cartel evolving based off their encounters with these teams? I mean, I would imagine that it's having an impact to a degree. They have to be at least aware of it.
Yes.
And any enemy or competition that has half of a brain cell is going to start to modify their behavior or their modus operandi. I'm curious what the teams are seeing from the cartels in a response.
The biggest evolution now, and especially what I go into in, the second and third printings and the updated Hidden War book, is the trends that have changed. And it has to do with regulation. Prop 64 basically incentivizing the cartels by watering down the laws where they don't have any real penalty, and they're unlikely to go to jail if they get caught. They're just out producing us. They're moving to private land now because they know if they get raided, they're probably not going to see jail time. They can probably run away and escape. And if they don't escape, and there isn't any other aggravated crimes involved, like trafficking, banned poisons that are felonies, weapons, or any other felonious crimes, and it's a misdemeanor, they're going to get their plants destroyed. And then they're going to go away to another grow site that their plaza boss is involved in, and they're going to be in another property the next day. So now it's just gotten to a massive oversupply being done on private land, and us hitting private land warrants like multiples a day with our cannabis enforcement teams. And granted, Andy, these are in rural, remote tracts, but they're not like, you don't have to hike 5 miles through a remote trail like you're going into a national forest pristine area to get to them. You can drive to them. And a lot of times it's, outdoor cannabis in and around plants, plantation style, that you would not see in the outdoors, the wooded trails that are a little more hidden. But it's the big hoop houses, with the white visqueen plastic. They look like kind of a half dome. And what really woke it up for me is I pulled the plug at the end of 2018, 30 years in, I'm done. And in 2019 started this, had the book opportunity, started outreach and education, realizing that I can speak a little more freely now. I'm not under gag orders. And now we can start to get some awareness. And kudos to you, brother, for bringing me on your show and having a concern, and, kind of feel like we have a real, real connection, given where you grew up and knowing that was in the foothills on the waterways where you were in the ocean, loving too. And then I made it my mission to, pen being mightier than the sword at this point, to just start to get as many people involved of trying to fight this and helping us out to make it more of a priority, and make the Hidden War a little less hidden. And what I was able to do last year is I got roped in with Jorge Ventura, who's a really, really motivated investigative journalist, young guy, started with Daily Caller, and they were doing their second documentary up in Siskiyou County in Northern California called Narcofornia. And it was mind-blowing. I went up to co-host it with him. I got interviewed for it. I embedded with my old partners from Siskiyou County Sheriff, doing raids 3 years after I had been out of operations. I had not gone into a grow site for 3 years. And I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be kind of cool. I'm getting back in it. It's more from an educational outreach media side, but all my old partners I worked with and my guys are still working with, it was great it was a homecoming operation. And it was nuts. Talking to those guys, they're like, dude, we're going to do 4 warrants today. And there's 15,000 grow houses here in Siskiyou County. And they're stealing millions of gallons of water a day. They're digging illegal wells with their own well digging rigs that we would literally walk past a well digging truck that you'd see putting your new well in here in Montana. Illegal, tapping the underground water in the state's worst drought we've had in a century, to the point where we interviewed farmers, we interviewed ranchers, we interviewed community members of the city of Doris and Siskiyou County, as you know. But for your listeners, you got Mount Shasta, one of the 7 natural, monstrous, beautiful mountains full of glacier ice, snow peak most of the year. That's kind of your headwaters, right, for that pristine part of that county, most remote county bordering the Oregon border. And now you have ranchers, farmers, veterans, small town, rural community people that would live in an area like we live in Montana now, having a great way of life, a very healthy, very community oriented, farm, field to table, healthy life on every level. And now they're going, okay, I'm the only rancher left. I have 200 cartel, Asian, Hmong cartel, and Mexican cartel private land grow sites all around me. I hear gunfire at night. There have been guys with body armor and AK-47s at my gate telling me, your water's probably going to disappear. Don't make a problem and we won't have problems. That is not an exaggeration. There were people that stayed, basically blurred out, that we interviewed for that documentary. The same thing happened in Riverside on that Cartelville Daily Caller documentary that Jorge did before we even met. So while I was seeing all this going on, and I was looking at these hoop houses, I was going, damn, man, it was bad in the remote forest outdoor grows, but now I'm looking at 2,000 or 3,000 plants in a hoop house that has all the banned nasty sprays on it. And we walked into one grow house, and there was a little side room, kind of a prep room. And the Tyvek suits for hazmat with the N95 fitted rebreather mask, like full on hazmat class, DEFCON 5, right? And those were stripped out clearly because they had been putting all this crap on this black market weed and then took it off. And now they're aware of the poisons. And now it's not in the open air, it's concentrated in a dome. So we had to cut those roofs. Sheriffs peeled them back real slowly, had to get the carbon dioxide levels at appropriate level and let that thing air out before we could even get close to that site. And what does that tell you about not only the tainted weed that's going into the black market to the Midwest, East Coast that everybody's consuming, getting basically potent THC levels, but very, very dirty weed at a smaller price. And the water destruction was crazy. The water loss was crazy. I didn't anticipate seeing so many dogs just being abused. The animal cruelty that we were privy to, that we saw, these dogs that are brought in to guard a grow site, and then the grow site is either abandoned, this particular cell moves on, or the dog isn't, behaving or doing what they needed to do. We interviewed a lady she basically was doing an illegal grow dog rescue organization that she had to create. And Andy, I'm not kidding. I'm a dog lover. I've been working canines. We're all dog lovers, man, in this conversation. And these dogs, literally, we have pictures, and we saw some of them emaciated, starving to death, barbed wire around their genitals, around their neck, cutting them off like a hangman's noose, and put there deliberately. And I went, okay, that's a level of evil, man, that everybody can relate to.
Yeah.
And no matter where you sit on the cannabis continuum or what you're, really paying attention to in the cartels, that just tells you the mindset of these particular criminals. And obviously the water was a key issue up there when these farmers, these ranchers are telling me, we're out of water. We can't water our hay alfalfa. I have no crop. I'm going to have to leave. I'm moving to another state. I can't believe I'm leaving Siskiyou County. I'm like fifth generation. Farmers' crops, ranchers for their livestock, couldn't water their livestock. We interviewed many ranchers. And then I really got the skinny from my old partners that were, putting a little dent in the haystack, trying to get a little dent, hitting four grows a week when it's going with impunity. So this is something that needs to change. And clearly, as you mentioned, and knowing the background of what it's escalated to, and it's not only the change with bad laws and seeing what Prop 64 has done in California now 5-6 years deep, because it's got exponentially worse. It's the fact that when we went through COVID, and I addressed this in the second edition of Hidden War, because you and I talked right before that, and it was bad. And then when I started to deal with this and see it firsthand through the lockdowns, and I was seeing, egregious poaching in my backyard here in Montana in the national forest, gates that were supposed to be locked that were cut. People, there weren't LEOs available to patrol that. We were all on lockdown, or we were pulled into civil, unrest issues or medical problems. There was a lot of civil unrest, as you know, and the cartels go, that's great. They thrive. They're a culture of chaos. They went, this is the perfect storm. We will outproduce everybody. We'll do fentanyl. We'll traffic people in plain sight. We'll move the kids for the sex trafficking rings. We'll keep the cannabis stuff going in a Mediterranean state like California, because we can still get good money out of it. Just in the business model, whatever's going to make them the most money. And it was a freebie. It was open season. And we're just starting to see that start to decline a little bit as more emphasis is put on human trafficking. More emphasis now is on illegal cannabis where it needs to be. And fentanyl is starting to get a lot of attention, finally, through a lot of mutual friends that you and I know that are starting to push it. And I'm, trying to basically say, look at these guys as polycriminals. Look at them as a domestic terrorism threat, like you said at the beginning of the show, and why we got to reclassify. And look what they're doing to our public and how they're eroding us within when we're concerned. And, we have whatever we're doing in Ukraine, we have all these other places, around the globe that we're doing stuff. But I think we need to look inward.